Hello there, everyone. Judge Andrew Napolitano here with another pop-up. Today is Wednesday, January 19. It's about 2:20 in the afternoon on a snowy, cold, though sunlight brilliant, Northeast United States. I'm coming to you from Northwest New Jersey. Today, I want to talk to you about my column, which comes out tonight, called Perilous Times. Oh, my goodness, are we in perilous times? And they are made worse when the government's political decisions try to eradicate the peril and they make things worse. Here's what I'm talking about. The government recently charged, of the 3,000 people who stormed the Capitol building on January 6th, it charged 11 of them with sedition. Sedition is an attempt to overthrow the government by violence. It's almost inconceivable that 11 people could overthrow the government by violence, particularly when there's 3,000 others there, and when there's several hundred police, and particularly when the 11 are not armed. Well, what is sedition? You know, the British kings, I'll give you a little history first. The British kings and the British parliaments, their favorite tool for staying on their inherited thrones was to charge their adversaries with treason. Treason could be anything the king wanted it to be. Under Henry VIII, if you made eye contact, unwanted eye contact with the king, that was high treason. You were brutally dismembered and then eventually executed. If the king commanded you to speak, as he did to St. Thomas More, his former Lord Chancellor, the precursor to the modern prime minister, and you remained silent, you could be beheaded, which is what happened to Thomas More. So the kings and queens and parliaments in Great Britain twisted and turned the meaning of treason to mean anything they wanted, which allowed them to eliminate their adversaries. I mean, Henry VIII had one of his wives executed for treason because he wanted to marry somebody else, and he couldn't marry another person while he was still married to the first one. Crazy, insane, but instructive, because when James Madison wrote the Constitution, he put the definition of treason in the Constitution so that no president and Congress could do here what British monarchs and the Parliament had done there, twist the meaning of the phrase so as to make it applicable to harmless behavior intended to eliminate dissidents. Treason is defined only as waging war against the United States or by giving aid and comfort to their enemies in wartime. So what did the American government do under John Adams, our second president, and the Federalist Congress? They came up with a new crime called sedition. And sedition was whatever they wanted it to be. Didn't carry the death penalty, but they enacted the Alien and Sedition Acts. The sedition part of it made it a crime to speak maliciously about the government. Speak maliciously about the government. The same generation, in some cases, the same human beings, had just ratified the First Amendment, which said Congress shall make no law abridging the freedom of speech. But in the Alien and Sedition Acts, they did that. Congressman Matthew Lyons of Vermont, the Ron Paul of his day, was famously prosecuted for mocking President Adams' waistline, and he was convicted, and he spent 2 years in a federal prison and eventually was pardoned by Thomas Jefferson, who succeeded Adams in the White House. My point is, sedition has been used so flexibly, so unconscionably by the government that it shouldn't even be a crime. Eugene V. Debs, the firebrand socialist in the progressive era, gave a speech blasting American entry into World War I. He was convicted of sedition for the speech, and the Supreme Court upheld the conviction. Here we are in 2022, and of 3,000 people at the Capitol, the government has arrested and charged 750 and then picked 11 and charged them with sedition. If convicted, they face 20 years in jail, as opposed to the more moderate jail terms that those who were charged with trespassing or defacing property or obstructing a governmental function. Look, I don't support what happened there. These guys did trespass, even though the police invited them in, and they did deface property, and they did interfere with the orderly operations of the government. But they no more planned, plotted, or were in a position to overthrow the government by force than you or I. Why were they charged? Well, they were charged because their political views are hated by this Justice Department. There were 1,000 people who stormed the federal courthouse in Portland, Oregon in October 2020. Remember that? And they defaced and damaged the exterior of the courthouse. Remember that? None of them was charged with sedition. It was a left-wing group. That, of course, is another interesting case because 200 were arrested and 200 were charged, and miraculously 100 of those charges were dropped. Why? Probably FBI agents and FBI informants who the government mistakenly arrested. So what are we going to do when the government oversteps its bounds and overcharges? It does that all the time. It probably wants to intimidate these 12 or 11 people, A, into silence and stopping their political activities, and B, into pleading to some lesser included offense. I hope they don't. I hope there is a trial for sedition. And then we'll find out, was the FBI really present on January 6th? Did they really have FBI undercover agents embedded in the crowd? What did the federal government know, and when did they know it? And if the FBI knew about this stuff ahead of time, why didn't they stop it? Well, we know the FBI knew about it ahead of time because if you read the indictment against the 11 members of the Oath Keepers, you will see in excruciating detail all their communications going back to the week after Joe Biden was elected president. So it's 2 months worth of communications in there. Where did the FBI get it from? They obviously had an undercover FBI agent or an undercover cooperating witness inside this group who was telling them what was going on. And that's the head scratcher. Because if the FBI knew what was going on, why didn't they stop it before it happened? Judge Napolitano, Judging Freedom.